Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel Sparkle English, where I help you improve your level of English. In today's lesson, we're going to go over the most basic punctuation rules in preparation for back to school. At the end of this lesson, we will have a short quiz. So punctuation is a set of symbols in writing that helps make the meaning of sentences clear. These symbols let writers express their meaning and help readers understand the text better. In today's lesson, we're going to cover the most basic punctuation rules. I have detailed videos on all of these punctuation marks, and I've linked you in the description below to my full punctuation playlist, but this video is going to be a quick review of the most important rules. So we must begin with periods or full stops. These are called periods in North America, and they're called full stops in British English. So periods are like the stop signs of sentences. They tell us when a sentence has ended, and we use them at the end of a declarative sentence. You can see we add a period, and then we add a space, just one space, not two spaces. In the past, when we used typewriters, we had to use two spaces because of the way typewriters were formatted. But now with computers, it is not necessary and actually considered incorrect to use two spaces after a period because we don't need it. It's very obvious that this is a separate sentence and that there is a space. And then the next sentence, we begin with a capital letter after the period. So for example, my favorite subject is math, period. We have a new teacher this year, period. The library has over 2,000 books, period. School starts at 8 o'clock, period. All of these are declarative sentences. They are statements that we are making. Now let's talk about question marks. A question mark is used at the end of a sentence to indicate that it is a question. It tells the reader that the sentence needs or wants an answer. For example, when is our school trip? Question mark. This is clearly a question. The person asking this question wants an answer. Our school trip is on January 21st, for example. Do we have an exam tomorrow? Question mark. Again, this question wants or seeks an answer. Yes, we do, or no, we don't. What school supplies should I buy? Can I go to the library? So we use question marks at the end of interrogative sentences when we want an answer. It could be a yes or no answer, or an answer with more information. Now let's talk about exclamation marks, and they can also be called exclamation points, and that is this symbol here. An exclamation mark is used at the end of a sentence when you want to show strong emotion or surprise. This could be happiness, anger, shock. For example, watch out for the ball! Exclamation mark. Imagine you're throwing a ball and it's going to hit someone in the head. So you say, watch out! And we use an exclamation mark for a sense of urgency. It shows it's important. I got a perfect score in my English test! Exclamation mark. This is showing excitement. Now you can end this sentence with a period. That's okay as well, but when we use an exclamation mark, it's showing more excitement. And in English, we only use one at the end of the sentence and not one at the beginning of the sentence, as some other languages do. We won the basketball game. Today was the best day ever. Try not to overuse exclamation marks. This is more common with informal writing, in emails, messages to your friends or family, or when you're writing a novel or a short story. Now let's talk about commas, and there are many different rules for commas, so let's talk about the basics. A comma is used to indicate a pause in a sentence or to separate items in a list. We also use commas to connect two independent clauses with a coordinating conjunction. And you can remember the coordinating conjunctions with the term fanboys. For and, nor, but, or, yet, so. For example, Ben needs pencils, comma, pens, comma, paper, comma, and an eraser. Now this comma before the conjunction and is called the Oxford comma. Some people say use it, other people say don't, and it depends on the style guide that you are using. I would recommend you ask your English teacher if you are in school how they prefer you to use this comma, because technically it's correct with or without, it just depends on the style guide. Another example, it rained today, comma, but we still played soccer outside. So in the first example, we are using commas to connect items in a list for different items. And in the second example, we're using a comma to connect two independent clauses with a coordinating conjunction. It rains today is a complete sentence. We still played soccer outside is a complete sentence. And a comma is not strong enough alone to connect two complete sentences. However, with a coordinating conjunction, it is. And also, it is required. You must have the comma before the coordinating conjunction connecting two independent clauses. And finally, at recess, comma, we invented a new game with marbles. We have an introductory element here at recess, so we follow that with a comma because it's introducing this independent clause. Now, if you want a more detailed guide on helping you with punctuation, you can check out my 50-plus page guide on punctuation, which I've linked you to in the description below. If you order this ebook, it is full of the most important punctuation rules you need to succeed in English, and there are also practice worksheets after every section. I've linked you to that in the description below. So now let's talk about apostrophes, and this here is an apostrophe. An apostrophe is used to show possession. It is also used to indicate the omission of letters. So we use apostrophes to form contractions. For example, Laura's backpack was left outside in the rain. In this example, we're using an apostrophe to show possession. We add apostrophe s to names to show that the noun after the name belongs to that person. So in other languages, they might say the backpack of Laura, but in English, we say Laura's backpack. The backpack of Laura is not common to say in English. Another example, Matthew's book is in the locker. So that apostrophe s just means the book belongs to Matthew. Here's an example of an apostrophe used to form a contraction. I don't understand this assignment. Don't is a contraction for do not. I do not understand this assignment. But we make it shorter so it's easier to say with don't. We omit the letter O and push it all together. I don't understand. He can't speak English very well. And here we have omitted an N and an O and pushed cannot together into can't. Now let's talk about quotation marks. So quotation marks are primarily used to indicate direct speech. You see a lot of quotation marks when you're reading a book. North American English uses double quotation marks. So North American English uses double quotation marks first and then single quotation marks for a quote within a quote, while British English typically does the opposite. Now, I am Canadian, and Canadians use a mixture of British English and American English, so I use double quotation marks. For example, David said, comma, and then we have a quotation mark, meet me at the library, and then another quotation mark. So we have to have the quotation mark on either side of the direct speech. This is what David said, word for word. So this would be typical in North American English, and in British English, they would have just a single quotation mark on either side. Make sure to be consistent with whatever you are using and make sure to follow the style guide of the country that you are in. Another example, what time is it? The girl asked. Again, this is a direct quote from the girl. This is exactly what she is asking. Where is your homework? The teacher inquired. There are some other rules with quotation marks. Again, you can check out my video on that, which I've linked you to in the description below. So now let's talk about colons. These are colons right here. It's like two periods stacked on top of each other. So colons are primarily used to introduce a list, an example, or an explanation. For example, we need to buy 3 things, colon, butter, sugar, and flour. You can see that this is introducing a list. If this sentence said we need to buy butter, sugar, and flour, we would not put a colon after buy. Because we need to buy would not be a full, complete sentence. We only put a colon after things because we need to buy 3 things is a complete sentence. It is an independent clause. And the colon means which are. It's a way of saying which are or which is. We need to buy 3 things, which are the following: butter, sugar, and flour. Another example. His mother gave him one piece of advice before his first day of school, colon, always be yourself. Again, this colon is representing which is. His mother gave him advice, which is always be yourself. There's one hobby that always relaxes me, colon, reading a book. So now let's talk about semicolons, and these are different from colons. A semicolon looks like a period with a comma stacked on top of each other. And semicolons are used to join closely related independent clauses. For example, the debate team meets on Mondays. The chess club practices on Tuesdays. Here we've connected these 2 complete sentences with a semicolon. You could put a period and capitalize the T and make it into 2 different sentences. Or you could put a comma and add a coordinating conjunction such as and. However, in this case, we've just used a semicolon. So you have different ways that you can combine these sentences. Notice that after a semicolon, we do not capitalize the first letter of the next word unless it's a proper noun. So this is a small lowercase t. Another example. There was a big snowstorm yesterday. School was canceled for the whole day. Again, these are closely related independent clauses, so we can combine them with a semicolon. But again, you don't have to. You could just make this into 2 sentences. Here's another example where we capitalize the word afterwards. Mrs. Smith teaches English. Mr. Jones teaches French. Here we have Mr. Jones. And because we always capitalize Mr., it still is capitalized after the semicolon. Now let's talk about hyphens. So this is a hyphen here, and hyphens are used to join words or parts of words together. So for example, my mother-in-law is a science teacher. With certain words in English, we have hyphens to connect them. Mother-in-law. In this one, we have a hyphen after mother and after in, and that connects it, because this is technically we're talking about just one thing. Joey signed up for an after-school program to improve his math skills. She graduated from a well-known university. Now, I highly recommend you watch my video on hyphen rules. A lot of words that are hyphenated are compound nouns or compound adjectives, and they do require memorization. Because well-known comes before university, we hyphenate it. If you watch my full video, it will help you understand this more. So now let's go into our punctuation basics quiz. There are 8 sentences in total, and you must add correct punctuation to each sentence. Let's begin. Number 1, my best friend's name is Sarah. Number 2, who is your favorite teacher? Number 3, be careful. Number 4, You're doing a great job. Number 5. You need to practice more, the gym teacher said. Number 6. I need to bring scissors, markers, paper, and glue to class tomorrow. Number 7. Mr. Thomas is a patient teacher. He always answers our questions. Finally, number 8. My favorite subject is math, but my sister's favorite subject is history. Okay, so you can see here that some of these sentences have punctuation and others don't. So let's add the missing punctuation. First, number 1, we need to add an apostrophe after D. My best friend, apostrophe S. My best friend's name, the name that belongs to her, is Sarah. And then we end this with a full stop or a period. Number 2 is a question. Who is your favorite teacher? So we end this with a question mark. Number 3, be careful. I said this with some excitement, so we need to end this with an exclamation mark. Now, number 4, we're missing an apostrophe after you, your, you are. This is a contraction. You're doing a great job. Here, you could end this with either a period or an exclamation mark, depending on the emphasis. You're doing a great job would be with an exclamation mark. Now, number 5 is a quote. You need to practice more. So we have the opening quotation marks and closing quotation marks after more. Then we have a comma after more, and then a period after said. Now, I didn't discuss this in this lesson, so I recommend you watch my quotation marks lesson. But after a quotation mark, if we have he said or she asked, and we end the sentence in the quotations with a period or it's a statement, we don't put a period. We put a comma instead of a period. If it was a question, we could put a question mark or an exclamation mark. However, we never put a period inside the quotation mark like this unless it's the very end of the sentence. So we only end the sentence with a period after said. Number 6, I need to bring scissors, comma, markers, comma, paper, comma, and glue to class tomorrow, period. Now the comma after paper and before and is the Oxford comma, so that is optional. You might choose to use it or not use it. But here we have to use commas because we have a list of more than 3 items. Now here we have Mr. Thomas is a patient teacher. He always answers our questions. We have 2 independent clauses. We can't just add a comma here because that's called a comma splice and it's incorrect, but we can add a semicolon. And finally, my favorite subject is math, comma, but my sister's favorite subject is history. So here we put a comma before but because we have 2 independent clauses connected with coordinating conjunction. So remember, it's not strong enough. We need the comma plus the coordinating conjunction. And finally, after sister, we put a comma. My sister's favorite subject is history because we're talking about the favorite subject of her, my sister's favorite subject. So apostrophe S. Okay, so let me know in the comment section how many you got correct out of 8. Again, I recommend you order my Punctuation Rules ebook if you want extra help, and make sure to watch my other lessons, especially on any punctuation mark that you had difficulty. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in my next lesson.